I think the honeymoon with CJ Stroud is unfortunately over. While last year he bursted onto the scene, he had this amazing rookie year, led the Texans out from rebuilding year after year and winning their first playoff game in a few years, making them seem like an attractive free agent destination. The Texans this year haven't looked like that at all, and I know that they have a better record than they did this time last year, but they added talent. They have added a ton more of pieces to surround themselves with CJ Stroud, and I understand the offensive line hasn't been good. They've been succumbed to injuries, missing his two top receivers in Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. That's a big blow, but we've seen quarterbacks overcome patchwork offensive lines, mediocre wide receiver talent. This was still pretty good production, and you still have Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield, but it all starts up at front. And what I'm noticing with the Houston Texans is that they continue to play worse week in and week out, and we're seeing CJ Stroud regress in his sophomore year, and I think at this point we can say it's a sophomore slump. The other thing is that the Texans offense hasn't scored a touchdown since week 6, and that's a major reason why they've had their recent slide, losing 3 of their last 4 games, and they own it, the league worst point differential in the second half. And I think this all unfortunately comes back to offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. And specifically in this game against the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans were great in the first half, intercepting Jared Goff 5 total, and they were up 23-7 going into halftime, and they just collapsed. No points in the second half. Some situational errors where I think that they could have been aggressive in certain cases, they could have been conservative in certain cases, and I understand this is a young team, a young head coach in D'Amico Ryans, but there are some things that have cost the Texans some games, and is also reflecting poorly on CJ Stroud, just not being able to hit the throws that you need, not being able to execute late. And remarkably, the Lions were able to rally from this deficit, overcoming 5 interceptions and winning at the buzzer 26-23 to go to 8-1 on the year. For the Texans, I feel like this loss is continuing to be a damning case that while they might be a playoff contender just because this AFC South division is so poor and nobody seems to want to push this team, they've already swept their biggest competitor, and I frankly feel that they could sweep the rest of the division even in this current state of things. But I do think that they are not in the same class as the other AFC contenders. Now, while they did beat the Bills early on this season, I don't think that's the same team that they would play if they were to meet up again. And the Ravens are definitely better at this version of the Houston Texans, and the Chiefs, I mean, they're just in a whole nother stratosphere, let's just be honest. So it could be a disappointing year where they could be at the same place, they might win a game, but that's it, or they just flame out in the wild card round and kind of regress after having a really promising rookie year.